All right, here we are. Welcome back to all our viewers and or listeners. And here we are for the issues and challenges of today's fire service. I'm Chief Rick Lasky, and we've got our regular team missing one, and we got a very special guest with us as well, Chief David Rhodes. But I will throw this reminder out there before I forget, because I'm gonna forget a lot of stuff. If you have any questions or comments, head over to Twitter and throw them our way, and our producer Pete will jump on them and try to get them to us. Just remember to add the hashtag FE Talk for Fire Engineering Talk. But today we're going to spend our hour remembering Chief Bobby Halton, our good friend. Chief David Rhodes was able to join us. We asked David to join us. He's going to be on for a little bit. He's actually, I'll let him talk about, he's actually in Indy, where he was supposed to be there with Bobby for the ribbon cutting for Indianapolis's new training center. But real quick here before we get started, a little background on the show, Issues and Challenges of Today's Fire Service. Today, our show, for a lot of you that remember, years and years ago, at FDIC, Bobby came up with the idea to do a big room class in the middle of the day at FDIC with John Salka, my best bud, and myself and Bobby. And it was we called it the Issues and Challenges of Today's Fire Service. And we'd sit up on a big stage like this show with no agenda, no notes, no script. And I would sit to Bobby's left and John would sit to Bobby's right, because that way there was a referee between us. We would do our show, and then we did that for years, which that actually a couple years ago got combined into the after hours show we'll talk about in a little bit, that we do in the evening with Chief John Norman and Captain Bill Gustin. And then that led, when we started the Humpday Hangouts, Bobby said, you're going to take the third Wednesday and we're going to do Issues and Challenges, you, me, and John, which grew legs in itself to where we had different guests on. And then it would happen where, John couldn't make it, or I couldn't make it, or Bobby, and my God, it's getting so hard to do this, and last minute cancellations. And Bobby says, you got to get a co-host, you got to get a partner. And I went, Terry McGrath, man, Terry's God. I mean, Terry's on the show all the time. Scott, obvious John, he goes, Terry's perfect. Oh my God, Terry. So we begged Terry, and Terry jumped on as our co-host with the show. And then, so we were able to do that. And then a few years ago, we've had Chief Scott Thompson from the Colony on with us so many times. He's been with us forever. We'll talk about that. And obviously John started with it and came back, and we were like the five of us, Terry, John, Scott, me, and we just, it became the five, like you see on Fox News. And that was once in a while we'd have a guest on, but it was just, the five of us clicked. And David, before I throw things to you, and I want to say welcome, obviously, Terry and Scott and John. There were let me throw this out here, David. There were a lot of people that pinged me and wanted to be part of today's show, and understandably so. Some pretty incredible people, some great guys and gals in the fire service. And I talked with Pete, our producer, and talked with Terry, John, Scott. David, we felt, I asked you if you would join us, you and even Eric, the VP, if you had a few minutes, but because of your importance to our family. But we didn't want to let it, we want it to stay special. This has been our show.
Yeah.
So go ahead, David.
Well, thanks for inviting me. And I remember we did a very similar thing after we lost Bruno. I remember being on with you then, with Bobby and some of you guys. But yeah, it's been a tough 36 hours or so. But first of all, I just want to say thank you for the hundreds of texts and phone calls. And Rick, we had a great couple of conversations yesterday. First one was definitely tougher than the one last night, but
Yeah.
it's still surreal. It's still setting in, but I'm glad that Bobby had the quality of life that he had right to the end. Glad that nothing happened to him that would debilitate him to like, having to have personal health care and stuff like that. And,
I don't think that would have been possible with him.
no. And all day yesterday, all I could think of was the old Frank Sinatra song. I did it my way. and I know he's laughing at us. He had this 2 or 3 year transition plan for me. And every time we'd talk, he'd go, boy, I pity the next guy that's coming in here. And he was talking about me in a sarcastic way. And I was talking to his buddy from Tulsa, Scotty, earlier today. And Scotty was like, hey, we want to plan a big retirement dinner for you whenever you decide you're going to step back. And Rhodes, he's, coming in. He said, we want to have this big retirement dinner for you. He goes, I don't want a retirement dinner. He said, I won't show up. And so Scotty said the whole time he was over there at the house, when it happened, he's like, you bastard, you did this so you wouldn't have to show up at your retirement dinner, So, but everybody has been fabulous. Obviously, please respect the family. They're still trying to plan things, and we'll get the word out as soon as we know what's going on with that. But we'll definitely be having a tribute and probably a service at FDIC. But
well, David, you and I have been together since Penwell, the old Penwell before Clarion bought FDIC, the original advisory board. And I this particular show, Bobby made the announcement, a while back that he was, you've always been instrumental with fire engineering, the logistics coordinator for FDIC, and just tons and tons of stuff, and your role. And when he said that, we were all happy because we're like, this is perfect, that Bobby, chose you, to partner up and as a successor. It was like, I'm like, God, because how do you don't ever replace anybody like that. But when Bobby brought that up, it was like, I was like, oh, you're such a great guy. You bleed the fire service. You're a true brother. No agenda, no ego. You're one of the least. I don't think you've ever had any touch of an ego in your life. You're one of the most down to earth guys I know. So we were all excited, David, and I know. So you guys were supposed to be in Indy for the groundbreaking for our good chief up there, Ernie. I love the chief. We all do. John, we talk about all the time, and Scott about the chief at Indianapolis, Ernie Malone. But so
I was on with them. Of course, they offered their full support, and we were supposed to be here together today for the ribbon cutting, and I'll have to jump off in about 10 minutes and head over to that. But the whole Indy area, the whole FDIC team. I'm here with Ted Moore and Jacob Spence right now. I'm in Jacob's office, and everybody's just 100% supportive of whatever we need to do to make the show go on. And like you said, nobody can replace Bobby. What you do is, you build on what's already there, and you rely on the team to make it happen, and you make it your own. And I think it's important that Bobby would want everybody to know, it's like, you don't do it for Bobby. That's not the way you honor him. You honor him by carrying it on, and you do it your way, but you do it in honor of him, but you do it for the guys. You do it for the guys and the gals that are out there working in the station. We become the advocates of the fire service, and we push the fire service forward. That's how you honor him. We can't, everything won't be a tribute to Bobby Halton every day and all, but you honor the man by working hard, by having his work ethic, and by building on the legacy that he's built, and we'll take it to a new level. I guarantee you, we'll take it to a new level. We'll have tons of the same iconic people that have been there, and we'll have tons of new people too. We got to build a whole new generation of superstars to keep this thing going. So it's going to be a challenge. It'll be emotional for sure, but when they toss you the ball, you take off running with it. You take off running with it, and you honor everything. I think Norman's book, Standing on the Shoulders of Giants, isn't that his new book? I've been thinking about that all day. Obviously, you are always standing on the shoulders of all the people that's come before. And I think I got a unique opportunity in that I'll probably be the last of a generation that knew Brennan, Bill Manning, Halton, and that group, because a lot of our young audience only knew Bobby. They only knew Bobby and you guys, of course, who have been there forever. So it's a unique time, very sad, obviously, but it's going to be good. He left us a great foundation. He left us a great show, and we're going to carry on. We're going to carry on.
Well, David, you know this, and I'm going to throw this to John next. David, you know this very well. You mentioned it. Bobby was always about the future. He was always like all our class reviews for FDIC, all the articles and helping new authors. It was always about, he'd say, Ricky, find the future, find the next so-and-so, find the next. It was always about finding the next all-star, find the next, which there's so much talent out there, but he was always that way. And again, that's why we had another show set up for today, and there's no way you could do anything but talk about Bobby, because this was our show. This was Bobby. He was part of the team here. And for those of us that might be tuning in, that know Bobby, but maybe not as well, Bobby grew up, and I'm gonna throw this to John because they used to go back and forth about New York City. Bobby grew up in New York City, ended up out in Albuquerque, went to school out there, and ended up in Albuquerque, New Mexico, in the fire department, and worked every rank all the way up to end up as ops chief when he retired, and then came to Coppell right next to Scott and Terry and I as fire chief, and we fought some fires together. We actually had a Mayday together, and just big difference, impactor there, got in the truck company. So, and then the editor's job opened up. And oh my holy God, he was off and running for what he had to do. And John, I mean, you two used to talk about it was always funny. Anytime you two started talking, Bobby's accent changed, and, and you used to tell him, so what's going on now? And it's like all of a sudden he just trailed back and he was talking like New Yorkese. I mean, that I always thought that was funny, but. John, you said something the other day. I've always said it, that I'm still, I tell you every time, I'm still amazed when I see the video tribute at FDIC to the Lifetime Achievement recipients, and me being up there, I'm like, I don't belong with that group. And you said something about, that, and I want you to talk about that for a sec before we get to Scott and Terry. You were kind of reminiscing yesterday about receiving your Lifetime Achievement Award from Bobby. What it meant to you. I'm just saying, we were just talking, talk about that for a moment, about that time among all our other fun times we had together.
Yeah. We've been talking a lot and listening a lot last couple of days, but I just want to go for a minute back, like 30 years. I remember I did a little gig in Albuquerque when Bobby was still working there. He called me up and I went out, and where did I stay but his house? He used to brag about that all the time. Yeah, it's all to stay to my house, and he called it like the Ponderosa. We sat out on the front porch, in the evening, we had dinner and sat in the living room and watched TV, just like two guys, and then all the years since then, and it's just so funny. Every single person on Facebook that we were kidding around before we went live, right, about the pictures, about being the most photographed guy in America, right? Do you know every one of those guys, even guys that like met him once and took that picture, they feel about him like we do. Even guys that met him one day at FDIC in the hallway and got a picture with him, they're all putting a picture up there, like, and Bobby's the same. He's the same in every picture. He treated everybody like they were gold, like they were the newest, best, sharpest guy around. And of course, we all know he was. He was the sharpest guy around. He was so well read and so well spoken. And God, it was embarrassing sometimes to just be on the air with him because I'm like looking shit up on my phone when he's talking.
Terry was saying he Googles. Terry spends half the show on Google looking up everything Bobby would talk about.
Yeah. What does he mean? Yeah.
I got to
Well,
laugh or I'll cry. You know,
I told Chief when that window popped up and he was on there, and I thought, oh crap, you got to get on your A game now.
that's it. The whole thing got lifted up a little bit, a
Yeah,
couple of rungs,
yeah.
you know.
Well, we said that, you know, what was missing was him sitting at it. All of a sudden, he'd be at the airport. He'd jump in there at his desk, and I'll say this,
and always late.
Rhodesy, every single show, he would hold up usually one book, and it was the functional fire. We'd always talk about, and I'd start off by saying, and we have, you know, our regular cast of characters, you know, Chief John Sulka, my co-host, Chief Terry McGrath, and we talk about, you know, the different people. I said, and our good friend Chief Scott Thompson of the county, he pulled that book up like that. I go, the author of the best-selling book, The Functional Fire. He did that every time.
With that grin.
with that grin. That was just, it was incredible. You know, we were talking about this, and you know, I've been like a time bomb of tears yesterday and today and everything. But before we went live, I talked about how blessed God and David, you and I talked about the phone last night, took care of me. You know, the trip to Hawaii to go teach for Shane for the 50th State Fools and the Hawaii Fire Chiefs. My wife couldn't go, so I took my son Ricky, who met Bobby a long time ago, and Bobby couldn't bring Marcia, you know. So Bobby's like, "Where you?" We met him. He was getting out of the car with his luggage, guys, and we're supposed to go to dinner. I'm like, "Come on, we gotta go." He goes, "Let me go throw this in the room." And we drove. We were talking about it because we ended up at a Chiefs dinner like 45 minutes away from the hotel in the middle of nowhere. And my son said, "Dad, this is like one of those bad mafia movies where they're going to have a sit down." And we got out there, you know, and it's always, you know, Bobby, let's sit over here. Okay. All right. Then we got to have our getaway. We always got to plan our getaway. And the whole trip, it was like, where are you guys at? Where are you guys? All right, I'll meet you out by the pool. I mean, and we didn't, I wasn't sunbathe. We just sit out there and we talk. And my son hit it off. You know, my son's a veteran, an FMF corpsman from the Navy, and he works for Lockheed Martin. And he goes, "Dad, he's so easy to talk to." And then they would work out every day. And Bobby go, tell him. And my son, "Tell him the old man beat you again." And my son's like, "God, he outworked me. That guy's like a machine." And it just, the whole trip of being able to do the dinners, every break, it was like, "Where are you at? We're out the pool. Where are you at? We're here." We would sit in this sushi shop when it was closed and just talk. God, I called my wife, well, a couple of times. One time on the phone, I said, "This is one of the best visits I ever had with Bobby." And I've had great visits. And then when he left, you know, he left right before us, and we hugged for the longest. He's always a hugger, but for the longest time, and he said, "I love you so much. You always have. You're my little brother." And just, you know, you've always been there for me. And I'm like, and it was a moment that I'm like, I can't believe that happened till right now. I can't believe that we were able to spend that whole trip together. I posted that picture, David, of Shane and Bobby and I, and you looked at him, you know. Now he showed me, for those that know, he had that, you know, the monitor. He was very open about that. I'm not telling you secrets for his heart, you know, with whatever that's going on with the chemo. He's fought cancer since I've known him, since the 90s, and he's always beat it back. And he opened up his shirt. He goes, "Well, it's, you know," and I said, he goes, "I'm at the," I go, "You're not at the end. You're going to live to be 100. Stop that. You've told me that like 20 times. I go, "But you know who you are." I said, "You're Iron Man." Because he had that thing and it's on, it's glowing, and it's hooked up. I go, "You're Iron Man. I'm waiting for you to take off into the sky and go fight, like, you know, terrorists and all kinds of other things." But
we were on a conference call last week, Rick, and he, I guess there was 7 or 8 of us on the call, you know, and he flashed us like he was in New Orleans trying to get some beads. I mean, he just pulled it up right in front of the camera, showed us his whole chest and his monitor and everything. That's him, though.
Oh God, it's just, you know. So Scott, you know, one of the things, I don't think he may have said it before. I don't think I ever shared this with you, but we were in January. We were in West Virginia. The 3 of us were teaching a company officer academy together. We used to do that a lot of years in West Virginia.
Great picture.
Do you remember? So Bobby, you know, I did my monologue. John did his monologue. Bobby got up to do his, the beginning. And I sat down the front row, and Bobby got into one of his speeches, one of his, fire and brimstone, get you fired up. If you don't love the fire service, get the hell out kind of thing. And he talked about, drama, his son, the commander in the Navy, the top gunner. He talked about his other son, in the Army. And so this kid, John, you remember this? This kid, Scott, leans over and he goes, what's his other son? A rocket scientist? I go, yeah, actually he is. He's a nuclear physicist. He's a nuclear physicist. I'm like, I'll never forget that story. Like, yeah, actually he is. And the kid goes, holy shit. I go, yeah, dude. I mean, really, yeah, you got 1, 2, 3. I mean, he and Marshall were just popping out geniuses there for a while. But Scott, you got to meet Bobby a long time ago, and you two clicked right away. What are some of your favorite memories of Bobby?
I got two great stories that I love to tell about Bobby, and one of them started off pretty negatively, and I don't know if you remember this, Rick, but I just came to work for you, and I didn't know Bobby at all. And I went to a conference in San Antonio, and I had my job shirt on, and I'm walking down the hall and I hear this, hey, Louisville, how do you like those Vindicators? Well, if you remember, that's when Calvin Alvison, we were getting ready to do a driver's test, and we couldn't make them be consistent. And, I guess I had a little attitude there working for Louisville and stuff. And I just kind of said, we don't like them. And he goes, whoa, whoa, whoa. So we sit down, we're sitting at a table, Bobby and I, and pretty soon we look up and there's people all around us. We're debating this back and forth, right? And it was one of those, we'll agree to disagree. So I get up and I leave and we shake hands, and he was teaching with Ted Nee, and I go, oh, I'll never see that guy again. And I walk off. 6 months later, my ex-wife worked in Coppell. She goes, hey, we're getting a new fire chief. His name is Bobby Halton. I'm going, oh, geez. I said, I thought I'd never see the guy again. But I'll tell you, Bobby had every reason to think I was an ass and not like me. But I'll tell you, and that was probably a few months before Christmas. My phone rang Christmas morning, and it was Bobby. And had a very nice conversation. Like I said, I didn't know him very well, but you also remember this. We got a call not long after that because you were there. And it was like 6 o'clock in the morning. I see Bobby. I go, oh, this isn't good. He said, somebody died. And he goes, hey, Scott, what are you doing? I said, nothing. He goes, you got to get to the deli man in Coppell. And I'm, what? And he goes, the deli man. And I'm like, well, I got to check with Rick. He goes, no, I already did. I checked with, remember we showed up, and who was the other person there? Bruno. And you remember me, you, Bobby, and Bruno sat there for, I think, 2 meals and just talked and talked and talked. And that was just, again, he had no reason in the world to, and then, of course, going to FDIC and the rest is all just really cool stuff. But those things were really just 2 really cool times that, that Bobby really showed that, like you say, he makes you feel like the most special person on the planet. Well, he's having that conversation with you.
Exactly. He just, and you brought up the Vindicator story, Terry. You were talking about that earlier. That first time, that's when he was with Kirk Allen. They were selling the Vindicators, and remember we were redoing everything, and I said to the guys, they're going, you don't want to do them smooth bores, do you? And I'm like, so what we do, we laid out every nozzle made to man and said, you guys, we're going to flow water, and you pick the one you want. And I wanted smooth bores, but I wasn't going to say nothing. It's like telling your kid what college to go to, they're regretting it, because they're not happy. And you remember, Scott, the guys are running. We had the meter on the nozzle, and they were running back and forth. They go, that's not correct. No, it says you're flowing. No, we're flowing in. And they were back and first of all, they couldn't believe that we lost that much water from the pump panel's digital display to what we're actually flowing, which a lot of guys don't. And then they were like, how much water is coming out of that Vindicator nozzle? And, I mean, it was just, it was absolutely, but
you remember initially we didn't have the right hose, and we came back and bought some. We didn't have the right hose for that nozzle. And Calvin, you know how verbal he was, the kinking issues and all that. Once we bought the new hose, which I think I came in and I said to Tim, hey, we got to get some new hose, and you approved it right away. And once we got the package, they were great. It started off a little rough. So I wasn't a big believer in them at that time when Bobby asked me, but we got it worked out.
Well, exactly. And Calvin's the one that came in, and Rhodes, you'll like this, having been a union president as long as you were. Calvin was our union president. He goes, Chief, I got a safety concern. What's that? He goes, well, we decided only buy one Vindicator. And so the cross lays were split with a Vindicator and a Fall. He goes, Safety says you're supposed to have the same line, same GPM, same flow for both lines. He goes, we're pulling that vindicator first, and then we're bringing this little rinky-dink 1.75" fog nozzle behind it. We need the rest of the vindicators. And he was the one that was against it. And I love Calvin, but the flows were just incredible. Just absolutely incredible, David, and I know you're going to leave us in a couple of minutes, but there was also a fine dance that Bobby was able to perform. And that was the struggle between the fire and EMS, everything service that we did, and the corporate side of things. I know he used to talk about that all the time, what you're into, you've got this whole group and we're not out there, the suit and tie group that God bless, and you see at conferences, these are firefighters and paramedics and hazmat, all these people. And then there's a corporate side. There's always a business side. And I remember we were bleeding money with hot. We were bleeding millions when we got in there because money was just flushed down the toilet everywhere. And I remember him working with you in logistics just to fix all the crap. When you came into logistics, you just went, stop, we're starting all over, and fixed a lot of stuff. But talk briefly, there's that balance you got to walk to be able to please. It's like taking care of your mayor and city council and the guys. Now you got the corporate people and that he did a pretty good job with that. A very good job.
Yeah, for sure. And we used to joke because there's a handful of guys out there that are always, don't go to FDIC, it's corporate, support your local fire conference and all that stuff. But it's like everything else. The hands-on training has never made money. It's been a commitment from Penwell, and then Clarion continued it. It's an investment in the education of the firefighters. Obviously, the conference makes money. It's a business, but you have to understand it's everything else. Without the exhibitor side, without the corporate side, there is no training. It doesn't happen. Hot doesn't happen. The cost of the buses, the hotels, the equipment, the warehouse year round, it's a huge undertaking, and to allow it to continue because they understand the benefit of the caliber of the instructor that it brings, the caliber of the student that it brings. It's a good marriage. The content and the educational side has to be second to none. Because the exhibitors will tell you, we love FDIC because we get to talk to the people who use our equipment. We get ideas from those people, and it's unlike any other conference. Ray McCormick said it best one time. He said it's where the whole fire industry comes together. It's firefighters, it's instructors, it's chiefs, it's manufacturers, the whole fire service industry, organizations. You got Women in Fire, you got the EMS groups, you got the international instructors, you got Women in Fire. They're all in Indy with the manufacturers, with everybody. And it's just, how it is. It's as much the after hours networking and in the hallway conversations as it is some of the formal stuff. So
and what was always great,
it is
David,
a delicate dance.
Well, exactly. What was always great about that is, like you and like everybody on this panel, what I love about the group we run with is, and Bobby was the epitome of it. He didn't care who you were and where you came from. If you loved the fire service, you were gold with him. Yep. And some of the greatest marketing strategies he ever did, first of all, was joining forces with Women in Fire, formerly, with under a different name, which was incredible. Was absolutely incredible. I've had the honor of teaching for that incredible group. But there's role models. I have so many good friends, but he didn't care. He didn't care what your religion was, what race you were, what gender, what your sexual. He didn't care anything. If you loved the job, you were part of the family. And I think, John, he did that. Your dinner after your award, we were at Buca's, and we had a little reception dinner and congratulations dinner after John received his Lifetime Achievement Award. And as busy as Bobby is, and he is at FDIC, John, he told me there's no way he's missing your dinner. And guess what? there was no way he missed it. I mean, right? He was all about coming out and seeing you.
Yep. And we talked about that a number of times. We rarely saw Bobby at FDIC. You know, Bobby was a busy man. He was out doing what he was doing and had to be in 100 places at once. And, you know, we had our little stuff going here and there at the book booth and our couple of appearances and stuff. And, but he made it to that dinner. That was a special appearance for me, you know, for him being there. And not that we expect him to see us. Obviously we went on with him every year for one of the programs, but it was just great having him here that night. And, you know, he made the time to be there for me, which I appreciated very much. But again, that's Bobby. And it could have been you, it could have been me, it could have been Scott, it could have been anybody getting any kind of award. He always, I don't know how he did it. I don't know, you know, frankly, it's embarrassing. He's older than me and I couldn't keep up with him. And even though David just said, you know, he inspired you to maybe stay busy. I don't know. I'm sort of a little pissed off at Bobby. I can't stay up with him. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm starting to lay back a little bit finally. I'm 65 years old and things are slowing down a little bit. And all of a sudden I'm watching him saying, holy crap. He was somewhere else yesterday. And if you did happen to see him at FDIC, you know, you were just talking to somebody else that was with him last night and he'd get a piece of one dinner and then go to another ceremony and then he'd be in 5 places after dinner, you know? Great.
Well, he was always, Jimmy Spears, one of our, you met him, one of our volunteers here with Wichita West at his first FDIC. I don't know if he was waiting for hot or whatever. He was sitting down on one that, you know, waiting to go. And he's looking at his phone. And so he heard some guy say hi to him. He looked up, he goes, and there was Chief Halton. He goes, I jumped up, shook his hand. We started talking. And he says, you know, where are you from? He goes, I work on Wichita West. He goes, I work with one of your guys with you know, Rick Lasky. And Bobby says, you tell Lasky he wouldn't make a pimple on a firefighter's ass and all this stuff, and just, you know, having fun with him. But Jimmy talks about, he goes, here, I'm this brand new firefighter just sitting at this spot. I've never been. And you would never know it. The biggest guy in the conference would just stop and talk to you like he's known you for 50 years. You know, just incredible, David.
Hey, John, Jack Murphy, like 15 minutes ago, emailed me the spreadsheet, or 30 minutes ago. I said, do you have a schedule like where all Bobby was at FDIC? It's on a freaking spreadsheet. So I just opened it up and started shaking my head. So yeah, it's crazy. I got to run meet Chief Malone.
Tell the good Chief we love him and we miss him. Tell him we love him.
Thank
you,
y'all
David.
for being friends, and thank y'all for honoring Bobby.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, David.
Good luck, David.
Good to see you, David.
All right, thank you. All right.
Hey, Rick, I got one more story I want to share real quick.
Go ahead.
It ties into that. But my first year, my oldest, both my boys are on a job, and Garrett was still working for Keller. He wasn't even in Arlington yet. So he's brand new. So he wanted to go to FDIC. And you remember, this was after you turned it over to Curtis. You and John moved inside and we were keeping it going, but you guys were doing your thing. And you remember how strict they got about people being on the hot training if you weren't signed up. And John O'Connell would manage that very well. So I called Bobby and I said, hey, my son's coming to FDIC. Is there any way that he can kind of come out with the old man at the hot? And he goes, didn't you hear about our new mentoring program? And I said, no, I didn't. So he goes, don't worry. So we show up that year and Garrett was right in there with the hot instructors. He got the shirt, he got the coin, and he ends up teaching the next 2 days with Larry McCormick. And you talk about something to this day that has left, and, you know, how many people get to, you know, hang out and be taught by somebody like that. But that's how quickly Bobby made that decision. He said, yep, bring him, here we go. And Garrett, like, the whole time he goes, man, I don't deserve this. I don't deserve to be with these people. I said, just shut up and enjoy it. And yeah, the new mentoring program, and it was put in place like that. He got the challenge coin, he got the hot shirt, the whole 9 yards.
You know what?
That's a great story.
Oh, and Terry, you know, so, you know, John, and for our viewers, you know, John and Scott, so Bible, we've known Terry forever. Terry's assistant chief of Louisville. We stole, Terry was a Dallas cop, a Louisville cop. We stole him and as a firefighter paramedic, and we promoted him to our bomb and arson chief. And we went to his graduation at ATF school with his bomb dog, and, you know, assistant chief. He's been a great partner. But you know, Scott, you know this. I call Terry.
He's my stress relief.
It's just your squishy
we enjoy
ball.
a cold one.
He's a squishy ball. Terry, I call Terry Elroy Jensen because he's one of the smartest dudes I've ever met in my life, and he should be a stand-up comic. But
Yeah.
he and Bobby, you get those two going, and it was just sometimes. How about it, John? Sometimes we would just sit back and go, "Let them go," and the two of them would go between whether they were pouring beakers and doing measurements and science experiments to talking the history. And Terry, you talked about it. Bobby had the history was. I love that. You know me. I love the fire service history. You want to talk about not being a pimple on us? I'm like that guy's wealth of knowledge, first of all, but his love for our history as a world, not
The
just
world. But it wasn't just the fire service. It was
Right.
the Roman,
world.
Roman Empire and everything else. It was absolutely amazing.
I want to know how we ever found time to read. That's what I want to know.
I want to know what he was doing, messing around with a bunch of dopey firemen. That's what I want to know. He could have been going to space and building cities or something,
Yeah, but you know what? That's an individual that made everyone who he came in contact with better for a number of different reasons. But one of the things that I particularly, he always kept me on edge because, like I told you, Chief, when he popped up on here, like I paid attention because he'll start talking about like those PFAS chemicals and DuPont, and I'm over here Googling like, all right, I don't know what PFAS is, but let me check this out. But you don't want to, like, I don't want to lead on to him. I'm dumb, and I want him to think that I'm as well read and is up to abreast on all these issues and the things that he's talking about. But really, he never made you feel that way. But I always wanted to feel like I was as intelligent as he was. I wanted to get to a level that he was. I wanted to be able to sit and have a conversation with him, and I didn't want to sound dumb. But all of that's me thinking that way because a guy texted me yesterday and he said, man, that's tragic about Bobby. And he was such a great guy. And I had the chance to meet him at FDIC once, and he was so nice to me, blah, blah, blah. But he said, I'm sorry you lost a friend. And I smiled at that. And I was like, no, you lost a friend too, buddy. I'm telling you, that guy, he was as much your friend as he was Chief Lasky's friend or Chief Halton's friend. I'm telling you, that guy he's a one of a kind and truly one of the kindest people I've ever, not just my interaction with him, but when you watch him interact with anyone else. And he doesn't walk away from that going, yo, that loser. He's just so genuine, so kind, so and I told Chief earlier that it's funny, Scott, you brought up that Vindicator thing because we were at station and they said, hey, you guys gotta go to the training field. This guy's down there demoing these nozzles. And of course, firemen, we're all driving down there. Okay, oh, here we go. We got to reinvent the wheel, man. We got to, So we pull up at the training field and there's Bobby out there. I don't know who this guy is, but I remember standing there thinking, this dude's a lunatic. Like he's spouting numbers and formulas. And I'm just looking at him going like, dude, it's a nozzle. Like, chill. And I'll tell you what, to this day, I'll tell anyone in the world out there, man, if you've got the water and the hose supported, ain't a better nozzle on the planet. But anyway, here's another quick thing, and I think it just alludes to what's already been brought up. Several years ago, I had met Bobby and really through your relationship, Chief, but I was at, I think, FRI or something in Dallas, and I was walking through the exhibit area. I was by myself. I walked around a table. Bobby's standing there and he's talking to about 5 guys. I didn't engage. I'm walking and you get about 10 feet from him and he hollers out, hey, Terry. And I turned around. Well, I'm shocked he even knows my name, that he remembers me. But, and then, you're always one of Ricky's boys. You're one of Ricky's boys. And then whoever he's talking to, well, you're in the fold now. And you know what? You walk up to 5 strangers, I'm standing there, and he makes it feel like this is where you're supposed to be.
Well,
and he always said the dream team. He always said the dream team. You had the dream team in Louisville. Anything's easy when you have the dream team.
Oh, I'm telling you, I said it all the time. It's easy to do good things with great people, and he used to say it all the time, Ricky, the problem with having great people is everybody else wants them. And you look at where everybody's at now, it's just, but John, it goes back to what you said too, what Terry said. For a guy who is, oh my God, just incredibly smart genius. There's some people that don't know how to handle that in their life, and they become very pompous and arrogant. Bobby Halton had this ability to, you know what I'm saying? He could talk about the history of the world and stuff and science and turn around and be able and treat you like you were part of his family, like he's known you forever. And John, you said it, you said just, you know, him walking down the hallways, he had to have a handler, right, John? He had to have he would never get to his next appointment if he didn't have, you know, his guy go, Chief, we got to go. Chief, because everybody and their mother, you know.
And you know what? He was so popular with everybody, like Terry just said, with everybody, with a guy who was just there for the first time, or a guy who says, oh, I've been here year 36. I'm, you know, but he was so popular that they had to make those cardboard silhouettes of him and put them up in the hallway just so more people could get pictures of him, right? I want one of them. I want one of them cardboard figures.
You know, as much as we used to tease him, and there's a picture of him drawing a mustache on one of them and a marker.
Yes,
as much as we used to tease him about that, I wish I had one right now.
Absolutely.
But God, just, you know, I mean, you know, his impact on FDIC, and we keep talking FireGen FDIC, but we're talking GEMS, Fire Apparatus Journal. We're talking, I mean, everything he did, and the marketing strategy of bringing the IWomen there, like I said, incredible group. EMS today was like, you know, and Scott, you as a chief and doing training, and Bobby, Terry with budgets. You know, you used to tell guys, right? Well, you got to choose. You can't go to EMS today, you know, GEMS, and you can't go, you have to pick FDIC one. Well, now we brought them all together. Now you go to one conference and you get everything. And I'm like, what a great, I mean, and that may not seem like a big deal to a lot of people, but it's a big deal. And that was Bobby. And Scott, you look at what he did. Terry mentioned it. You know, John's, you know, part of, you know, so many families in the fire service, what he did for us in our careers, you know, and being able to bring you to FDIC as a hands-on instructor. And another one of those Eddie Buchanan lovely stories. You meet him, then the next thing it's an article, then the next thing it's teach FDIC, then the next thing it's a book, the next thing it's this. Same thing for you, you know, to be
100%.
I mean, you were always going where you're going, but
Rick, a lot of that's because of you and Bobby, you know, 100%. You introduced me to Bobby, and I'll give you full credit. And I know you're going to deny that because that's the kind of person you were, but you know, I was just one of these Texas guys who do nothing outside of Texas, and you exposed me to that. But you know, I just want two quick comments. One of what Terry and John said. I think everybody was a little smarter because of Bobby. You wanted to up your game a little bit because you wanted to tap into that and love and understand the job like he did. But John and Rick, you knew him much better than I did, but I don't think I've ever heard him say no. I called him as late as last week. A buddy of mine wanted to go see Mo Davis is going to be presenting, Clyde Gordon, both from Houston. They wanted to go next year, and Clyde wanted to pass. I called Bobby and he says, yeah, absolutely. I don't think I've ever heard him say no. He says, well, let's find a way to get it done. But, you know, I never, everything I've ever asked him, yeah, let's find a way to do it.
Oh, he did it, you know, for Wichita West. You know, Ryan Fetcher, my chief, a great guy, you know, he wanted to go to FDIC his first time. And Chris Bashford, John, you met him, you know, Chris was our captain, and you know, we're like, you know, it was volunteer fire department, like anybody else, we got a budget. And I called Bobby, he goes, tell Chris I got his pass covered. And now they're hooked. Now there are two more people that are hooked going to FDIC. But
did he ever say no? Did he ever say, nah, that's a little too much, or no, we can't do that? I never heard it.
He never, you know, there were times, he, you know, like for the classes, like for the hands-on training, if you can't fill the bus, you're not going to have a class because the bus is caught. You know, a lot of people didn't realize that. Bobby exposed me a lot to, you know, John, remember how many times you and I, before Bobby's there, we'd sit there and try to figure out how much money they're making. I go, this isn't right. They should be getting this, and we should have vans for everybody. And then they
want to add 50 guys to the class. We want to add 50 more to the hands-on training.
Yeah.
We're like, we already have 100.
Yeah. And like in Clear Street, where we're at for years, the vacant apartment complex, I'm going, you know, they charge us $36,000 to use this for the 4 days. What? Every year they charge $36,000 to, you don't think they go, yeah, here, come and shit up our place. Everybody's making, I mean, you know, the balancing act of having to, you know, and if you couldn't fill a bus, Sorry, if you can't, the buses, 7 people in a bus, and there was guys that had like 10, they would have 10 people in their class and like 20 instructors. I'm like, and people would get mad and not understand it. It's like, being on the advisory board, John, for years, I had a guy get mad once because he wanted to do store fires. And this guy said, well, why is John Norman always doing? I go, because he's John Norman. I'm
John
sorry.
Norman.
Jesus, are you kidding me? But there were some hard decisions he had to make. And I think sometimes people were unfair about, I didn't get picked, screw you. And it's funny because what they didn't know is Bobby already talked to us going, look, there's always so many classrooms. I've already got this guy. I won't say who. There was a guy who's teaching FDIC now who was all pissy and got on there. And Bobby had him already scheduled for next year. And this guy, I called him and said, you better take all that shit down off of social media, because you have no idea what's going to happen next year, dude. Just, I go, just follow my lead on this. So there was some hard, it's like, what did Bruno used to say? If you want to make everybody happy, go sell ice cream. Everybody likes ice cream, but there were some hard decisions he had to make. John, for us running our hands-on training, you and I had 26 instructors between the two of us, 280 students a day. But you know what? We got everything we wanted, tools-wise and stuff. He was, very much accommodating, especially when Bobby took over. Bill did a great job. Bill gave us our start, but there was, I think when you could say you did it, Bobby used to talk about street cred, right? The street cred that, let's not pick classes where, people want to teach stuff. I love some of the enthusiasm by some of the brand new firefighters out there, but when they want to teach a class on how to be a chief, yet they've never been a company officer, how do you do that? I've got people that want to teach at FDIC who have never written an article for fire engineering. I think I should teach. Well, and the first thing we do, right, John, how many times have we been doing that? First thing we do, look at the class title, look at the bio, and then what we look for is based on my article with fire engineering or based on the class I taught fire. Don't come and say, I want to try my program for the first time ever at the biggest fire conference in the world and think just because you're a firefighter or just some chief somewhere with 5 trumpets that you should be just allowed to walk in there. There's other conferences for that. Go ahead, John.
And you know what? There's a whole staff there. Obviously, Diane and some of the folks that have been there and have recently left and stuff like that. But Bobby was the fire guy. Bobby was the guy that knew what a professional was. He knew what an expert was. He knew, I think you could tell by looking at their papers or maybe even talking to them. Some of them he would remember talking to them. But the way the group, and I can't take it away from the group because I know they put a lot of time into it, Diane included, for reviewing all the papers, and you're one of them as well. But he just had a great way of doing that. Bobby had such a great, I'm trying to think of a way to describe it, picking a great group of people to be. It wasn't all big name guys. It was some guys that everybody knew that'd been around for a long time. It was some up and comers, some guys that were starting to make names for themselves and had a little bit of time. And he always had some brand new people too. He was always breaking some new people in at the bottom, which is just like Dave said. He said, maybe I'm one of the last old timers, to head this thing up. And, there's a new generation coming up. And there always is, think of the guys that aren't around, not necessarily Bruno or Tom Brennan who are gone, but think of the guys like John Mittendorf and those that they're still alive. They're just done, and there's always new people coming up. And I saw this the other day. I had to click it. It was on Facebook. Knowledge is not skill. Knowledge plus 10,000 times is skill. You know what I'm saying? Like knowledge is one thing, and then you got that hands-on element, then you got that experience element. You got to have a nice blending of it. And Bobby knew that. Bobby knew how to manage people and pick people and promote people. It was just he was just great. He was just great at it.
Well, and again, like I said, it comes from you've had to been in the trenches. We talk about it a lot. I pick on fire chiefs a lot because they make it so easy, but there's a lot of fire chiefs that ever slept in it. Yeah, they do. Right, Scott? There's guys out there that I'm like, oh my holy God. But if
I can fix fire chiefs, I can cure cancer. I'm pretty sure of it.
Oh my God, I'm telling you. And it's just, like you said, John, the classes and him and Diane, I used to sit there and go, how do you guys do this? The advisory board goes through hundreds. I do hundreds of calls per page. So does Mikey Dugan, all the different Glenn Corbett, David. Like I said, Rhodesy and I met at the very first advisory board when Penwell first bought before Clarion Fire, FDIC. That's how I met David back then. And in 96, 95, and just, but But to be able to do that, I'm like, how do you do it? And we're in December right now, and they've already got the classes picked. And yet once in a while, someone will go, well, can they fit me in? I'm like, so in order to fit you in, that means
Yeah.
they either have to find another class somewhere that they don't have the room for, or they have to tell someone else, well, there's a change of plans. We're going to do you next year. We can't do, so you're telling us we should knock somebody out of the cart because you're
Right.
ready. You didn't turn your shit in on time or whatever.
Right.
But Bobby, the finesse he had, I just, Terry, KTA, talk about KTA. I'm sorry, John, go ahead.
Oh, yeah.
How many times did he come out for Keeping Tradition Alive? Keno Force. He supported the pipes and drums and honor guard because Bobby's
And the Fools.
traditionalist, man.
And the Fools.
Oh my God. If you said I'm doing something with the Fools, he goes, where at and when do I need to be there? Terry, real quick, and I want to turn this to John. He's got something. I want you to talk about, we lost our good friend, Tim Tittle, our partner, Terry and I, when you talk about the dream team, Scott, we all worked together. Tim Tittle was my number 2 chief for 12
Darryl Brown.
years. And Darryl Brown, Darryl's doing great things in Grapevine, but we lost him not too long ago. And Terry, talk briefly about, the impact Bobby had on that particular moment when we lost him. Would you mind sharing that story?
So Chief Tittle had fought cancer for, 5-6 years, and certainly had the highest of highs and the lowest of lows in that time. But at any rate, when he finally succumbed to cancer, and we had his funeral, and so we had obviously worked for probably 6 days to get a fitting tribute to Chief Tittle, and to back up, Chief Tittle, we're in the city of Louisville. He's a hometown guy, graduated from high school here. His family is from here. He's worked 42 years for the city, so you can imagine the size and everything that was going on. But anyway, we put together what I thought was an amazing service for Chief Tittle, and to honor him in a way that was fitting of his service to the city. But the night of visitation, we everything was going just absolutely scripted according to plan, and so I was sitting just kind of standing around in the church as people were filing through, and I looked up, and here came Bobby through the door. I didn't know he was coming, no idea. And so immediately when he came through the door, I went up to him. We chatted for a minute. Very, very solemn and a serious tone, and he wanted to get through the family and pay his respects to the family and to the line, and so he did all of that, and I waited for him, and when he got done, we started talking again, and it was obvious that he, because of his own struggles, there were just days where Bobby was clicking on all cylinders and was just the light in every room, and then there were some days where you knew that he was dealing with his own personal struggles, but he would never tell you. You just, you could see it, and I think everyone on this show has experienced that. But at any rate, he had driven in from Tulsa to come down, and specifically he wanted to come to the visitation and come to the funeral the next day. And so, I told him, I said, and he said, hey, what are you guys doing for dinner? And I said, well, I mean, this goes till 9, so as soon as we get things buttoned up here, no, we'd love to go. So I'm kind of circulating around, telling some of the guys, hey, Bobby's here. We all want to go to dinner. And so I said, hey, where are you staying? I'm just down the road. I said, that's fine. Well, I said, I'll tell you what, why don't you go? Because I knew he wasn't feeling that good. And I said, why don't you go, you rest, and let us finish up here. And then I'll come down and get you, and we'll go get something to eat. Well, I didn't have the knowledge at that time to really understand that he's not taking a handout from anybody. I'm not telling him, hey, you go rest and I'm going to come get you. He was having no part of that. So he said, nope, I'll wait right here for you guys. So he sat quietly in a pew, and a few people would come by and chat, and I would check on him from time to time. And things went on a little bit longer than we had hoped. And so finally I went back there and I said, hey, Bobby, seriously, man, we're later than usual. I will come get you. I promise. We're going to go to dinner. And so finally he agreed, and he left. Well, when the dinner time came and went, and he was not up for going. And so the next day I told him, and I said, hey, tomorrow morning I'll come down here and get you. But every time you try to make an offer, he would tell you that, no, you have more important things to do. I want you focused on this. And how are your guys doing? Never about him, never about his problems, never about his struggles. It was always about, I want to be here for you. I want to be here for Chief Tittle. I want to be here for his family. I want to be here for this family. And that was a huge takeaway to me. The next day, he was not able to come to the funeral. He was feeling that bad. And luckily, Dean, I think, was in town training over at the Naval Air Station, the reserve base. And he had to come get him and take him back home. And he couldn't express to me enough how disappointed he was that he wasn't able to come pay his respects to Chief Tittle at the funeral. And I kept thinking to myself, holy crap. I mean, I complain about everything. I complain about the air pressure in my car tires and the coffee temperature. And he complained and said nothing. It was always about me. It was always about Chief Tittle. It was always about this fire department, the fire service, the profession. And I will forever remember that time, because if there was anything that showed me what he was about, that was certainly it.
Great story.
Well,
Great story.
John, go ahead. You had something before, but
No. Whatever it was, I forgot. That's a great story.
well, and Pete, our producer, mentioned, Bobby was what, again, John, you obviously were there for 9/11, and he ended up getting out there as fast as he could, and that was a guy that just said, use me, and what do you need, whether it's from the company or from me or whatever. He was and that Bobby was so he first of all, one of the things I admire, I'll just say this, I admire about all of us and our team, and I can't believe, I'm sorry, Scott, you were supposed to help me.
Yeah,
his picture's not up there right now. His picture's
No,
always been up there
no,
with us.
no,
This is his show.
and he's always there and bringing a positive attitude and complimenting people, and it is his show. And Rick, we're going to have a lot more of these, and we're always going to have a spot for him. But the stories are all great, and I think everything that we've said reinforces ours. And I know everybody listening has probably 100 more stories that are all going to go along, and I guess as we start to close this off and start to wind this up as we're gonna, but all the people that put on there, let's be Bobby for a couple of days. Let's reach out and take those people under our arms and do some good and lift those people up. I want to tell one more story. Just it ties into what John was saying about his busy schedule. But you'll remember this because both of you over there, we were doing hot training. We're supposed to be wearing our hard hats, and somebody got hurt. And Rick, I think you said, "Hey, go outside and get, let them know." So I run outside and I didn't have my hard hat on. Well, somebody out there noticed it and right away calls me over and said, "Where's your hard hat?" And I said, "Oh, you didn't have it." He says, "Oh, who's your lead?" And I said, "Well, it's Chief Salk and Chief Lasky." "Well, you're done here. You'll never teach at FDIC again, right?" And so, okay. So I go back in and now I'm rattled. You guys were cool. But it wasn't 30 minutes later, Bobby shows up with his entourage. Now I'm doing the Denver box. I'm stuck in the nastiest, probably crappiest room in there, dust all over the place. Bobby walks in his suit with his entourage and hands me an FDIC ball cap and says, "Here you go. You got your hat now. Don't worry, you're coming back to FDIC."
It's like, I treasure the fact that we got to do fires right next door to each other when he was at Capel. And there's nothing better, Scott, us all being close, Terry, having bosses around you that know what they're doing, because that's not always the case. Sometimes there's chiefs around you that they're great at paperwork, but they couldn't find a fire ground with 2 hands, a flashlight, and a CNI dog. And when you've got people around you that know their job, that know all the whole job, that know the whole thing, it was and like I said, Iron Man, John, I told you what, the whole, the other day when he first sat down, he goes, "Just want to show you." And he told me, and he goes, "If anything happens," he goes, he showed me on his phone, he showed me all the wire. He goes, "Pull up this app, push this button, it'll activate, that this thing will start doing what it's doing. Plus these people, these doctors in Tulsa will be able to send this pulsing." I'm like, oh my God, and I said, like I said earlier in the show, you're Iron Man. That's who you are. You're Iron Man. You're from the show. That's Iron Man 3 or whatever. But I was starting to say the one thing that I love about our group And thank you, Scott, for helping me out, because I've done so good emotionally.
I wanted to let you finish your thought, boss. I didn't want to cut you off, but you're doing great. You're doing great.
Every one of us loves family. Terry, your kids, Scott, we are always talking about our kids, John, and I'm telling you, Bobby loves his boys, man. He loves his boys.
Yep.
His three sons, he loves his wife, Marcia, his best friend, but he loves, and I've just always said that I think the people that
and you can see the pride in his face when he talked about them.
The people that are important to me in my life are those who value family. I think if you value family, now that could be, you may not have any kids. That might be your mom and dad, or your spouse or partner, or your whatever. People who love and value family, I think, do well in life. And I think that's a tribute to him. I mean, when I retired, John, you flew all the way from New York. Eddie Buchanan came from Virginia. My Congressman Burgess, came back. Terry, you remember? And then Bobby came, and then he ended up dedicating, the Chief Rick Lasky FDIC scholarship to Denton County Fire Chiefs every year. And he pulled that out of his hat. It was just, there were so many things, and the comments we've been getting here, that Pete's been throwing on here, usually we try our best. There is no way. And to our viewers, please understand, thank you so much for all your wonderful comments about our friend Bobby. There'd be no way to repeat them all. You guys are looking at them too on the sidebar. It's absolutely amazing. I guess the tribute, as we start to close things out here, to Bobby is, how many times, guys, have we read in posts how down to earth he was, how much of an impact he had on the fire service? He never met a stranger. There's these same, we've read him before. Great guy, thank you. Great guy. The usual ritual stuff. This isn't the usual ritual stuff. There's a tagline there of things that they keep hitting on about family, friendship, everything. A guy who could have turned his nose on, a guy who could have thought, look at me, I'm all this. Like John, you said it how many times during the show today? We thought he'd stop, he'd talk to people. We'd sit there. He couldn't make it down the hallway. And it's not that people would always flag him. This guy was like a pinball machine. He was like a ball. He's a bink over here, and he'd be over here. Next thing, right, John? We turn. Where did Bobby go? He's over there now.
And he remembered them all. You'd be in the hallway. You'd have your 2 minutes in the hallway with him as he was walking past with a small or as large entourage, right? And while he's talking to you, another guy walks by and he goes, "Hold on, Billy. Oh, you got to see this guy. He just retired from the Air Force, and his wife is a firefighter." And also he's reciting a story to you about some guy that's just happened to be bumbling by in the hallway, And the best thing about Bobby, why we're all sitting here talking and crying and why everybody else is writing all these entries and showing all these pictures, because Bobby knew, he knew, and not only did he know, but he displayed it. He knew where he was in the lineup. And we talk about the mission, the men and me all the time, right? That book, that story, that lesson for officers, the mission, the men and me. And Bobby knew where he was. It was the mission, the men and me, and then it was Bobby. Bobby always put himself last. Whatever was going around him, even though he might have been the brightest star in the room, he was always bringing attention and heaping praise and complimenting everybody around him. When he left, the whole damn room was shining. Everybody felt like something special when Bobby walked out of the room.
That's a great way to describe it, John. That's a great way to describe him.
Yep. Well, and Chloe, what a great tribute. And John, I know you appreciate this. Your department, the FTNY training division, tips. They do this tips from training, and they did a remember Bobby Halton. And I won't read the whole thing, but they talk about he was a longtime friend and support of FTNY, including support after 9/11, his continued support of the Ray Downey Courage of Valor Award. And they cherry picked 5 different points here that I want to share with our viewers before we close things out about Bobby and what he wrote. Number 1, and in bold print, it said, "The privilege of being an American firefighter is one of those precious accomplishments one can achieve." And another one of the quotes from Bobby, "We exist to serve others. We put others before ourselves in very dramatic, open, and specific ways. We enter," and John, you love this about Bobby, "we enter structures, environments, and places that can and often do prove to be fatal." And then another point, "Often firefighters' deaths are violent and sudden. Sometimes the exposures plant diseases that linger and hide. Then after some time, they attack our hearts, our lungs, our bones, and our other organs in painful, cruel, and devastating ways." Second to last, vintage firefighters are patriotic. And in bold print, we unapologetically love America and all she stands for. We know our American history, warts and all. We respect and honor the sacrifices made, the accomplishments achieved, the fundamental goodness of our nation and her people. We embrace the effort to be more perfect union. Hope the better angels of our nature will guide us. What a patriotic man this guy was. And last point they put in, it is a privilege to be an American firefighter and serve with such amazing people. John, what a great tribute by your department for Bobby. Just absolutely. That's the class of the FDNY. And I know I'm talking your school. That's the class of the FDNY to do that.
And I just want to make one final point is, and that's the FDNY, but the words written by the guy from, like you used to say, from Mud Flap, Texas, some little station somewhere with a dirt floor, those are just as meaningful. And those people feel the same way about Bobby too, you know, so that's what was great about him. Yeah.
Scott, any closing thoughts? John, that was perfect.
Yeah. I'm just, again, all those great posts, as John said, every other one on Facebook, on social media about Bobby. Let's act on that. Go out and let's pass on what Bobby was so good at doing. Maybe not with the same shine and all that, but take somebody in and see the good in them and push them to be a little bit better and believe in them. Like I'm going to say, be Bobby for a while, live what he lived. And let's make this whole thing a little better and not be so quick to write people off and talk about all the bad things. Let's focus on the good and bring the next generation up for Bobby.
Absolutely. Like he always wanted it to be. That's another great point. Scott, Terry, any closers?
I will say this, if one other thing that I felt like I certainly noticed in Bobby Halton was he loved to laugh. He loved to, he loved the friendship, the camaraderie, and he loved to laugh. As sad as this is, and I explained this or echoed this to Chief Lasky earlier in the conversation. There are people that are overcome with sadness in a moment like this, and I think we've all been to services where we talk about we're going to celebrate somebody's life, and let's not turn this into a sad occasion. And I think that in some degree everybody feels that emptiness or hollowness of what's just happened. But man, just remember that guy loved to laugh. He made us better. He will continue to always make us better. The monumental things that he did for each and every one of us, whether you ever met him or not, I guarantee you something you do, something you wear, something your department's doing, so he had a hand in it somewhere along the way. He was an incredible person. And I think through the sadness, find some kind of consolation for yourself to say that, man, we're better off because of him, and find happiness in the fact that you knew him, the fact that he cared about you. He was your friend, I can guarantee you. And it's just, one thing I always remember about him is just, and that's what was fun too, Chief, for us. When he was on here before, when we get on 20 minutes, 30 minutes before we start the show, it was hard sometimes to even rein him in, because he's having so much fun, right? And Chief's all like, okay, hey, and now we're gonna cover this, and we'll talk about this, and hey, let's do a sound check, and the whole time the dude's cutting up, right? But that to me is precious, and in this business and in this society, we need more of that. So to Scott's point, take a little bit of that of Bobby and carry that forward as well.
He loved life. He loved his cars. He loved his Mustang. He loved his boat. He loved his boys. He loved his wife. And boy, oh boy, he loved the fire service. That smile you're talking about, Terry, like I said, that picture that Shane posted of us just days ago, grinning from ear to ear. And he was just lit in Hawaii at this conference. I can't even explain to you appropriately to you guys. He was just lit up the whole time we were there. I mean, smiles and joking and talking. And I said, I told Jamie after he went home and we were getting ready to leave, there it is, John. There it is. That's the perfect. Stand in front of his Mustang.
The red Mustang.
I told my wife, Jamie, I said, this is one of the best. I mean, I've always had great visits, but there's just something, there was something special. I said this before we even came home. And to get home and take the red eye back, and then
You know what, Chief? He was saying the same thing about you. I guarantee you.
There you go.
Guarantee
There you
you.
go.
he's a great guy. So thanks, guys. I know this was a tough one to do, but everybody on this show, producer Pete, Chief David Rhodes, every one of them agreed. Very appropriate, very timely, and the right thing to do today. There's no way we could have done another show. This was the show. This was Bobby's. I go back, John, you and me and Bobby started Issues and Challenges years ago in the big room, and it flew over here, and then we ended up with the 5 of us for years now, and we will have another show. The Issues and Challenges will continue on as Bobby would have wanted it to continue on. Our next show is January 18th. Can't thank everybody enough again for all the comments, all the wonderful things on social media as a whole. So many friends of Chief Bobby Halton. John, like you said, the most photographed dude in the world, man. Absolutely photographed. So as we close things out here, we're not going to change, and Bobby would strangle me because he's a patriot, family in the military. He loved how we always closed out our shows, T, and that was in closing. We always ask you to please keep the men and women in armed forces in your thoughts and prayers. Remember, never forgetting means never forgetting.
Never forgetting.
And, God bless you, Bobby. We love you. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thank you, Rick. Thank you for leading us.